What's going on, guys? It's NYPrepper here. Just wanted to do a quick video about prepping lessons learned from the Texas power outages, and not just the power outages in Texas, but power outages across the United States over the last few days due to this Arctic air invasion that we've had. South Dakota, Montana, the Plains states, Texas. It wasn't just Texas that lost power. It was also the Plains, the Dakotas, Montana. They also lost power as well. And what you're looking at here is actually one of the New York City reservoirs in my area here. And you can see all the tracks in the snow here. That's from people going ice fishing. New York City lets people go ice fishing and fishing on their reservoirs. You can also hunt on the reservoir property, and the hunting's actually really good on these reservoirs because not a lot of people hunt it. So you can actually find some good sized bucks on the reservoir lands. But you can see all the tracks here, and I just wanted to show you guys all the snow that we've gotten here. It's literally been snowing for the last like 3 days nonstop, and it's actually been a pretty unusually warm winter. And normally these types of Arctic air intrusions, they start in December, and we had like a little bit of a late start this winter here in upstate New York. But as you can see, there's a lot of snow here. We probably have about a good 2 foot, maybe 2.5 foot snowpack. A lot of snow here, guys. Look at all the snow. A lot of snow here, guys. All right, so definitely I'm not a stranger to snow. I love snow, actually. It's I absolutely love the snow, and I love the cold, I love the winter, and I love going for walks in the snow, especially at night when everybody's sleeping and the world is quieted down. I like to just go for walks in the snow and look at the tracks and things like that. And I'm just here on this access road. It's a unpaved road, and it accesses the New York City reservoir property here. And so I just want to talk to you guys about prepping lessons learned. And look at all this pile of snow over here, guys. It's still snowing, as you can see. So I'm no stranger to the winter, okay? Living in upstate New York, we've had some really bad winters here. Again, normally in the winter time, we get a few feet of snow, and it usually hangs around for most of January, February, and early March. We can have a good 2 to 3 foot snowpack that sits around through the winter, okay? At least in my part of upstate. For those of you guys that are not from the Northeast and you don't know the weather around here, upstate New York is actually very cold. It's a lot colder than New York City and Long Island. And the reason why is that it's further away from the Atlantic Ocean, so we get more continental air masses from Canada, but we also get the moisture from the Atlantic Ocean. And because of that combination of being close to Canada but also close to the Atlantic, it kind of puts us in a sweet spot for getting a lot of snow and a lot of cold air. And here you can actually see some deer tracks right here. This is a little deer trail. Tons of deer over here, mostly does, a lot of does. But here's a little deer trail, and that's what I love about walking in the snow, especially at night, because you don't have all the cars and people and everything else. And you could see that deer trail just going along the road here. So what are some of the lessons to be learned, okay, from this whole situation, in Texas and in the country? Well, first of all, I've talked about this for months, okay? I've talked about how you guys need to prepare for winter. I think a lot of preppers underestimate the danger posed by cold weather. I think that a really cold spell can do as much damage as an EMP or you know, a nuclear war. Okay, if we have a mini ice age again, you know, the last mini ice age was in the 1600s, or actually 1400s. Here we have more tracks here. I can't tell. It looks like could be a little fox or something. Looks like it could be a fox or maybe a coyote. A lot of coyotes and bobcats here. And so, you know, if we had another little ice age like in the 1600s, the Maunder minimum, if you guys want to look that up, the Maunder minimum, that was a grand solar minimum where the sun went dormant for a good amount of time, and it caused a global cooling spell. And you know, it was so cold that the river in London would freeze every year, and the Baltic Sea would freeze completely solid, so that you could literally walk across the Baltic Sea from Poland into Sweden. Okay, it would freeze completely solid, and the river in London, the River Thames, would freeze so much that they would have frost fairs on the river. Okay, and so merchants would come and they would set up little shanties, and they would sell things, you know, jewelry. They would have whatever, you know, it'd be like a little flea market on the river, on the frozen river. And it went on like that for a good period of time, you know, a good 50 years, you know, where they had those frost fairs, and it was just extremely cold. And people survived back then, you know, and I think that's because people back then, you know, they were more in tune with the weather. They were hardy people. They were tough. You know, people today, they don't have those same skills that our ancestors had back in the day. Here's some more deer tracks. You know, we don't have the skills that our ancestors did, and they were mentally tough back then too. But, you know, what if we had another mini ice age? You know, what if we had another Maunder minimum? Okay, how would you guys handle that? Do you have preps for that? Are you prepared for the next ice age? You know, we could potentially be heading into another ice age. I personally believe that we are, you know, and I've talked about it in a lot of my live streams, in a lot of my videos. I've mentioned that, you know, I think that we're heading for another ice age. I've said this for years. Anybody who knows me, any of my friends and family, you know, I've been warning a lot of my friends and family for the last 10 years that we could be heading for a mini ice age any time now, and we could already be in the beginnings of the next mini ice age. Okay, the next Maunder minimum. And we just don't know it yet, you know. But if you look at how cold the winters have been over the last 10 years, and you compare them to the winters in the 90s and in the early 2000s, you can see that the winters in the last 10 years have gotten a lot colder. Here's some more deer tracks. Look at all these deer tracks here. Actually, that looks like that could be either a male fox or a small coyote. Let me see if I can get a lighter, lower setting. Yeah, that looks like that could be a coyote. A lot of coyotes here. I got to be careful. But, so, I mean, what if we head into another Maunder minimum? You know, are you guys prepared for that? Okay. Do you have the necessary preps that you need to survive another mini ice age? You know, I personally think that we're in the beginning stages of a mini ice age, and the science supports it. You know, we've had a lot colder winters the last 10 years, and you know, we've had a solar minimum just now, and we're in the middle of potentially a grand solar minimum. And a grand solar minimum is basically just the sun going dormant for a long period of time, you know, kind of like the Maunder minimum. Okay, the Maunder minimum was a grand solar minimum, and NASA has said that they believe that the next solar cycle that we're entering into right now, solar cycle 25, could potentially be, you know, a grand solar minimum, or it could be a very weak solar cycle that would basically be very similar to the Maunder minimum, okay? And if that's the case, we could potentially see another mini ice age on our hands, okay? Over here we have a river that feeds the reservoir, and it's just frozen solid. This is literally a river here, and it's frozen solid. Here we have a rowboat. So, you know, are you guys prepared for that? Are you prepared for potentially colder winters over the next 5 or 10 years, you know, in addition to a pandemic, you know, and economic crisis that could be enough to really, you know, do damage to our society? I mean, we already have a pandemic that we're dealing with. We already have economic problems that we're dealing with. We already have global issues, geopolitical issues that we're dealing with right now. And imagine on top of that, we have a little ice age. Okay, I mean, that would just be really bad. And look at this massive oak tree here. This is just absolutely huge. Look at how big this oak tree is. It's just absolutely huge. And I think I hear a deer somewhere in the woods, probably walking around. But are you guys prepared for all these things? You know, think about it. And in addition to the mini ice age, I mean, it's not just the mini ice age, but as you see, you know, we could have situations where we have, you know, bad cold spells and Arctic air invasions, and you need to be ready for that, you know. And some of the things that you guys should have is that you should have alternative heating. You guys should have alternative heat sources, okay? Alternative heat sources are absolutely critical, all right? If your power goes out, like in Texas, they lost power, and most of the people in Texas, their power is, or their heating comes from electricity. So when the electricity goes out, they have no heat, okay? You don't want to be in that situation, all right? You want to have alternative heat sources in case your primary heat source fails you, all right? So if you're using electric to get your heat, you should have a wood stove or a fireplace or a propane heater, okay? You should have some kind of alternative heat source, okay? Don't just rely on one way to heat your home, all right? That's very, very foolish, okay? For example, let's say you have an oil burner, okay? Like here in New York, we have a lot of oil burners. People have oil for heat. And what happens if your oil burner breaks, okay, and it's in the middle of a blizzard and it's snowing outside? You think that the repairman's going to come out and fix your oil furnace in the middle of a blizzard, like right now, okay? No, they're not. So in the meantime, you have to have some kind of heat, all right? So my recommendation is wood stove if you can. Fireplace is great. And a propane heater is great too. You should always have a propane heater. Even if you have a wood stove, you should still have a propane heater. I really like propane heaters because propane heaters, you can turn them on and you get heat instantly, okay? You don't have to get the wood stove going to get it hot or anything like that. All right, so when I say propane heater, I mean like a space heater, okay? Like a workshop heater or a buddy heater, okay? One of those, that's what I mean. In addition to alternative heat sources, you should think about food. Obviously, you want to make sure you have food. Okay, food is absolutely critical, right? Because if you know, there's a bad blizzard and there's a power outage, everything goes black in the middle of the winter. You don't want to be standing in line, you know, trying to get food and water. Okay, like we saw images in Texas of people standing in line, you know, trying to get food and water. You don't want to be in that situation, okay? You want to be stocked up and, you know, ready to go, okay? So food and water, essential. That goes without saying. In addition to alternative heat source, you want to make sure you have proper winter gear, okay? A lot of preppers, they skimp out on winter gear because they feel like, oh yeah, you know, I'll just stay indoors if there's SHTF in the winter. I don't really need to do anything outside, you know. But what happens if you have to go outside for whatever reason in the middle of SHTF? Okay, what happens if you have to pull security and there's 2 feet of snow? Okay, just look over here how much snow there is. All right, if I had to pull security right now and I didn't have the appropriate gear, I would be very miserable. All right, not only that, I could even get hypothermia. Okay, so you need to have appropriate clothing. Okay, clothing is very, very important in cold climates. You have to have good clothing. Okay, good clothing is just absolutely, without a doubt, essential. Okay, and I'm just going to use the red light right now on my light here, Phoenix TK25. Going to be uploading a review of this light soon. It's awesome. You can switch between red and white light. So you need to have good clothing, okay? Good winter clothing is just absolutely, without a doubt, essential. For security reasons, if you have to pull security, snowshoes are important. And, you know, also, you should keep your winter gear with you in your vehicle in case you break down or get stranded. You should have winter clothing in your vehicle, okay? You know, don't rely on your cell phone, okay? In addition to that, you know, I think, like I said, a lot of guys underestimate or overlook, you know, security in the winter time. Okay, if there's 2 or 3 feet of snow on the ground and you have to do security, patrol your property after SHTF, how are you going to do that if you don't have any winter gear that's appropriate? Okay, you have to have appropriate gear. Okay, there's just no way around it. So make sure you have an alternative heat source, food and water, proper winter gear, snowshoes, jacket, pants, wool garments, wool sweaters, wool socks, mitts, okay, all that stuff. You need it all, okay? Another thing too is you obviously want to practice with your gear. You know, put your clothing on, make sure it fits you. Don't just go to the store and buy a bunch of crap and you don't even know if it works or if it fits. So put all your gear on, test it out, you know, get yourself some snowshoes. Snowshoes are critical, okay? Obviously, firewood is important. If you have a wood stove, make sure you have enough firewood. If you have a propane heater and you're using that, make sure you have enough fuel. Okay, stock up on your propane, stock up on your firewood, make sure you have enough fuel. That's common sense, all right? And, you know, generator, obviously, you want to run your electricity and charge your devices and things like that, okay? So make sure you have a generator if you can afford it, you know. But before you get a generator is not the most important prep. You know, a lot of guys that are new to prepping, guys and gals, the first thing they try to do is get a generator. Well, you know, that's great, but you can't eat a generator, you know. There's a lot more important things besides a generator, like alternative heat sources and food and water, okay? Winter clothing, winter gear. Those are more important than a generator, all right? And then in addition to the winter gear and the clothing, you want to think about getting a sleeping bag for every person in your family, okay? You know, get a sleeping bag for every single person in your family, and a wool blanket for everybody in your family, okay? So 1 wool blanket and 1 good quality sleeping bag for every single person in your family. And the sleeping bag that I recommend, that I believe is the best, is the U.S. military sleep system, which is basically 3 sleeping bags that you put together. And the outer sleeping bag is a Gore-Tex. The inner sleeping bag is a warm bag. They have like an outer bag that's made of Gore-Tex and it's camouflage, so it keeps you dry. And then there's 2 lined bags. One's like a summer bag and one's a winter bag. And the summer bag you can use by itself in warmer weather or in transitional weather seasons where it's not super cold but you want to stay a little bit warm. And then you have the winter bag, which is for winter. But what you can do is you can snap the winter bag plus the summer bag together for extremely cold weather. Like if it's, you know, single digits or lower, then you can snap the summer bag and the winter bag together, okay? So that's my recommendation. Get a good wool blanket also in addition to the sleep system. Get a wool blanket for everybody in your family, all right? Wool blankets are only 25 bucks. And I've personally used them with my fiance a couple of times. We went hiking or we went to the beach and, you know, we went to the woods and she got cold, or we were on, you know, out on the beach and it was still kind of cold outside and, you know, the wind and the water made her feel cold. And she put the wool blanket on in the car and she was warm within a matter of minutes. And she absolutely loves that wool blanket now, you know. So wool blankets for everybody in your family. Military sleep system, if you can afford it. It's a little bit pricey, but, you know, that's my recommendation, $150. That's what they usually go for. If you can't afford that, then just get some kind of sleeping bag, because the reason why is even if you have alternative heat sources, you know, for whatever reason, you may not be able to get them started, or they may not work properly, or, you know, it may not get as warm as you want it to. So if that happens, you need to have some kind of insulation, okay? And that's where the sleeping bag and the wool blanket come into play, all right? You can't just rely on a mechanical device, which is what a heater is, okay? A space heater, an oil burner, wood stove, those are all things that, you know, they require maintenance and upkeep to keep them running, and they're not always guaranteed to work. So what you need to do is you need to make sure you have ways to insulate your body heat, okay? And that's obviously where the winter clothing comes into play too, because if you run out of heat and it's in the middle of winter, you know, let's say you can't get that alternative heat source running, or you don't have an alternative heat source. If you have good warm clothing, you can wear that inside of your house, and then you have your sleeping bag and your wool blanket and you're all set, you know. And then if you have a few months of food or a few weeks of food stored up, you're good to go, you know. You just hang out in your home and wait it out, you know. That's all you have to do. You just wait it out till the power comes back and the heat comes back, you know. But if you have nothing but, you know, workout clothes and sneakers and, you know, that's all you have, then you're going to be cold. You're going to be in trouble. All right. So some small, simple preps can really go a long way. All right, guys. So I just wanted to talk about that. Think about security in the winter time. I'm going to be doing videos about security in the winter, and I'm going to be uploading some videos on that, because I think a lot of preppers underestimate, you know, operating in the winter time, which is a totally different animal than operating in the summer. You know, there's some advantages and some disadvantages to doing security patrols and recon and, you know, SHTF security in the winter. It's totally different than the summer, and that's something that people need to think about. You know, you need different gear. It's a whole nother animal, okay? But think about it, guys. Put it on your wish list, or, you know, put it on your to-do list, okay? Think about where your gaps are in your winter preps and your cold weather preps, okay? Think about what your gaps are and what you still need to get, okay? Think about the things that I told you guys about and see what you're missing, okay? And that's pretty much it for this video. So I'll keep you guys updated with any other breaking news related to cold spells, and I'll be watching the Maunder minimum potentially, or not Maunder minimum, but grand solar minimum that could be coming back and bringing us more cold weather over the next few years. I'll keep an eye on that and report anything to you guys. So thanks for watching. Take care. God bless. And don't forget the 3 Ps: prepare, practice, and persevere.